Good evening and welcome back to Weather or Not. I'm your host, Connor Friedhoff, here with my forecaster, Kyle Eck. Now, Kyle, we've been seeing some fairly chilly conditions. Is that expected to continue into the weekend?
Yes, Connor, not just the weekend, but we could actually be seeing some sub-freezing highs late weekend and heading into early next week.
Fairly chilly conditions, feeling more like the holiday season. Now, we have some pretty interesting topics for Nature in the News. What do you have for us this week?
So speaking of your mention of the holiday season, I'm going to be talking about poinsettias, which are our favorite plants heading into the holiday season. And I'm also covering this recent winter storm that just affected us this past Tuesday. What about you?
A lot to talk about. We have the impacts of Hurricane Nicole down in Florida, mainly the aftermath as well and how they're doing with the cleanup. But on the brighter side, we have the JPSS-2 satellite being launched into orbit by NASA and NOAA. That's going to give us a lot of capabilities in observing extreme weather and sea ice fluctuation, amongst other things. So we have a lot to talk about today. A very interesting show for us today.
That seems very interesting, Connor.
Well, interesting enough. Let's get right into it with the Nature in the News.
It's nice to add some plants to deck the halls as the holiday season approaches. No, I'm not talking about pumpkins, rather poinsettias. The Mexican-originating flowers have become a holiday mainstay in American homes through the 20th century, all thanks to the first ever U.S. ambassador to Mexico, Dr. Joel Roberts Poinsett, when he introduced the plant to America nearly 200 years ago. Over the years, the poinsettia industry has grown to pull in over $250 million annually. For indoor poinsettias, taking care for them is easy. Water them once a week and place them near a south-facing window to get 4 to 6 hours of sunlight a day. They're also not as toxic as they're made out to be. Their milky sap can cause stomach discomfort if digested amongst kids and pets, with only extreme cases showcasing allergic reactions. If taken care of properly, poinsettias can keep the holiday spirit alive well into the new year.
Hurricane season may be nearing its end, but that's no reason to take your eyes off the tropics. Hurricane Nicole made landfall in Florida as a Category 1 storm on Thursday, bringing with it storm surge and winds in excess of 70 miles per hour. Nicole is just the third landfalling November hurricane on record to affect Florida, the last being Kate in 1985. Numerous building collapses were reported, in part due to beach erosion, along with 5 reported fatalities. As the storm moved inland, the remnants quickly moved up north, impacting numerous states along the eastern seaboard. Tornado warnings were issued in Virginia and North Carolina, and a widespread 2 to 3 inches of rain fell across Pennsylvania. Power outages were reported as far north as southern New York. History would also repeat itself as Nicole's landfall would occur 43 days after Hurricane Ian, matching the time between the landfalls of the 2004 storms Charley and Jean, in addition to these storm pairs having eerily similar storm tracks. Thankfully, the tropics are expected to remain quiet this week as the cleanup continues.
Much of the interior Northeast got in on their first accumulating snowfall of the season late Tuesday and Wednesday. Higher elevations in Pennsylvania observed over 4 inches of snow, putting numerous places above their snowfall averages for this point in the cold season. At times, snowfall rates were heavy enough to allow snow to accumulate on roadways, making travel treacherous for people heading home from school and work on Tuesday evening. Temperatures were able to hover near and slightly above freezing as the winter storm exited the region, which made the Wednesday morning commute a bit easier as students and other people headed to school and work. With much of Pennsylvania now having seen their first real snow of the season, cold weather will stick around into next week, making things feel like winter as we head into the holiday season.
Weather satellites are some of the most versatile and high-tech instruments used to observe and predict extreme weather. The newest addition to these satellites proves this. Last week, NASA and NOAA launched the JPSS-2 satellite into orbit. The new satellite, which is part of the Joint Polar Satellite System, will provide important observations of extreme weather for at least the next 7 years. JPSS-2 can view tropical cyclone structure, as well as track phenomena such as dust storms, wildfires, sea ice fluctuation, and volcanic eruptions. One of the project's goals is to improve weather forecasting for the areas that the satellite scans. Also on the rocket was an inflatable heat shield, mainly there to test its capabilities in later NASA missions to Venus, Mars, and the moons of Saturn. The next JPSS satellites are set to launch in 2027 and 2032 and will join a vast network of advanced satellites.
Much of us here in the interior Northeast saw our first accumulating snowfall recently, but it's not going to be the same story heading into our Friday. Rather, the snowfall is going to be confined to the Great Lakes regions of the United States. That's ahead of our next cold front going to be sweeping through the area late this weekend. However, for us along the I-95 corridor, it's going to be a very dry stretch, so if you're traveling this weekend near the eastern seaboard, things are looking fine for you. It's Saturday that the cold front passes through the area. Again, mainly dry conditions east of the Allegheny Plateau, but that lake effect snow machine is going to be in full effect. Very high snowfall totals are possible near Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, but that's not going to be getting into our neck of the woods here in State College. By Sunday, everyone is getting in on the sunshine and dry weather, but along with it comes some very cold conditions. So much of us here in Pennsylvania are going to be seeing high temperatures below freezing to round out the weekend. So for our Friday here in State College, it's going to be partly cloudy skies with some snow showers in the afternoon. We're going to be feeling very wintry as well with a high near 32. For Friday night, it's going to be very cold, so bundle up if you're out and about in the town. The low forecast near 20. For Saturday, we have some more cloud cover to speak of, but I think we're going to stay mainly dry, the high near 31 degrees. Just to note here, our average high is about 10 to 15 degrees warmer than what our forecast is on Saturday, so make sure to bundle up again later on this weekend. And for Saturday night, again, it's going to be very cold with the low getting down below near 20 degrees. And for Sunday, this I think is going to be our coldest day of the week, our weekend with high near 30 degrees. Coming up next, we have Dana's feature on weather and horses.
Horses dot the fields in the distance, a walking symbol of courage, strength, and freedom. Through rain showers and sunshine, they stand grazing. Horses are an integral part of society. They're used for farm work, show and hobby work, and are loving pets. The weather can impact their health, behavior, and the little things too. As both the climate and the seasons change, horses are going to be impacted in a variety of ways.
General weather, right now we're transitioning from the warmer summer months into the cooler fall, winter months. So there are some aspects of management both on the nutrition and exercise side to think about when we transition to cooler weather.
Scientists have been studying both weather and horses for a long time, but connecting the weather to animals and animal behavior is relatively new, especially with how the change in climate can affect them. Areas in North America are experiencing higher rates of excessive heat, a shorter cold season, and more extreme weather events. Climate change is going to require adaptation. A good place to get an idea of where to start is the change in season, which causes noticeable changes in horse behavior.
When it gets to be like the middle of winter, they're going to want to huddle up and stay near each other for warmth, versus those, nice crisp spring or fall mornings where they want to run around.
Horses' behavior seasonally is pretty recognizable, but because of global warming, horses are going to have to adapt to new challenges a changing climate brings.
They're pretty well adapted if they've lived in that climate to deal with that. If there are extreme weather events like hurricanes or tornadoes, that's a whole nother side of things to be prepared for.
Climate change brings with it more extreme temperature and weather patterns. Prolonged wet conditions promote skin infections like scratch and rain rot. Wet weather also increases the amount and habitat of pests like mosquitoes and ticks, which increases the rate of disease. On the other hand, prolonged dry conditions can cause dehydration, overheating, and summer heat stress.
When you have cool, frosty nights and then beautiful warm days like today, the grasses can actually end up with pretty high levels of sugars. And so if you have a horse that's sensitive to high levels of sugar in their diet, I think of horses that are prone to laminitis and things like that, you want to make sure you restrict pasture access while those sugar levels are really high in the pasture.
Another cause for high sugar levels in grass is drought, because it throws off the balance between photosynthesis, which creates sugar, and growth, which uses sugar. Photosynthesis continues because the amount of sunlight does not change, but the growth is stunted by the lack of water, leading to a buildup of sugar. A horse grazing for most of the day could consume up to 2% of their body weight in sugar. High amounts of sugar can cause health problems in some horses, especially those prone to diseases like laminitis, founder, or horses who have Cushing's disease. But the sugars in grass also have positive effects on horses by giving them the energy for exercise.
If you're starting to not ride as often because of the colder season, still make sure your horse is getting some sort of exercise so that they're not just sort of pent up inside. Again, as you transition to a more hay-based diet in the winter, do that transition slowly. And I keep saying this, but make sure they've got plenty of access to fresh water.
Horses also have delicate joints because a lot of pressure is placed on their legs. Changes in exercise, barometric pressure, and lower temperatures can disrupt their equilibrium. But keeping up a consistent exercise routine throughout the year is important. It helps keep their muscle tone up and their joints flexible. Horses, especially ones with joint problems like arthritis, need extra warm-up time when it gets cold.
Seasonal care for horses has been studied by scientists for a long time, so they know how to make sure horses are kept happy and healthy. But as the climate changes, it introduces factors that are not yet well understood.
Certainly, we are seeing, in terms of large global events, I think of the Olympics or the World Equestrian Games, impacts of either large extreme weather events or hot, humid conditions where it can be challenging and potentially unhealthy to be working a horse at such high temperatures.
As the climate changes, rising temperatures are going to cause more stress on people and animals around the globe. Due to these changing conditions, caretakers are going to have to be adaptable to ensure the horses stay happy and healthy. From the Department of Meteorology and Atmospheric Science at Penn State, I'm Dana Osgood.
Well, after our first accumulating snowfall of the season, we've been in a pretty cold stretch, but how long will that last? Well, heading into our weekend, it's going to be quite bitter cold. Look at that. Friday, we're only getting to 32 degrees, and that's going to be the warmest we stay all weekend. Again, we could be seeing some stray flurries and snow showers, but they're not going to accumulate to much of anything on Friday, so your evening commute from work or school is going to be A-okay. Heading into our weekend on Saturday, again, those clouds do stick around, but those temperatures are starting to drop now below freezing. And overnight, we're also dropping into the upper teens, so any outdoor pets that you have, bring them inside because it's way too cold outside for them. For the day on Sunday, again, we stay very cold, but that sunshine does come more in play, so it's going to be a bit of a silver lining as we round out our weekend. For our Monday ahead, again, we're going to be about 5 to 10 degrees below average, but that silver lining is going to be, we're going to be mainly sunny. The sunshine continues into Tuesday, and along with that, our temperatures rebound to near average. But by Wednesday and Thursday, the clouds do hold up a bit longer, and the temperatures, they start to scale back a bit, around 5 degrees below average. And heading into our Friday, ahead of our next rainmaker, it's going to be getting a bit cooler, down to near 40. So all in all, it's going to be quite a chilly start to the holiday season.
This cold air is just not letting up this week. It's been very chilly, and the wind today has been absolutely brutal.
I know, that's thanks to lake effect snow showers impacting the greater Northeast. Luckily not us, so we're not getting in on that snowfall.
Yeah, thankfully so. With that being said, let's get right into the Weather Whiz Quiz. This week's question is, when was the last hurricane that directly impacted Florida in November? Was it in 1978, 1985, 1992, or was it in 2001? You answered 1985, you would be correct. This is eerily similar tracks we saw with the 2004 storms and the 2022 storms.
I know. Going back to 2004, it was Jean and Charlie. They made landfall 43 days apart. And with 2022's hurricanes, we saw those also 43 days apart.
Yeah, and very similar storms too, Ian and Charlie being the high-end storms, Jean and Nicole being the low-end storms. Just so many similarities, it's uncanny.
I know, it's very interesting, but unfortunately very costly and unfortunately deadly as well.
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, thank you very much for watching this week's edition of Weathernaut. We'll see you next week.